Welcome back to the Running Wine Mom podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Slinsky, aka the Running Wine Mom. If you're a formula feeding parent, this one is for you. Recently, Consumer Reports released a major investigation that tested 41 baby formulas from harmful contaminants like lead, arsenic, cadmium, and even PFAS. The findings raised serious concerns and a lot of questions from parents, experts, and the industry. Joining me today is Dr. Sana Mujahid, head of food head of food safety testing and research at Consumer Reports, to talk directly about the report. We'll cover how the testing was done, which formulas raised red flags, what role the environment plays, and how parents should interpret the results. We'll also talk about the FDA's new initiative, Operation Stork Speed, and how it fits into all of this. If you heard about this report and felt overwhelmed or unsure what to do next, the conversation is here to give you clarity, not fear. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Mujahid. Welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
I am so grateful for you to come on. I have been posting about this on social media and have gotten so many responses from parents. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to answer some of the questions from the report, as well as some directly from the parents out there that they have. So I appreciate it.
Glad to be here and talk about the report.
All right, so let's get right into it. What led Consumer Reports to conduct this investigation into baby formula now? Was there a specific trigger or an ongoing concern?
I'd say more of an ongoing concern. There have been reports in literature, meaning academic literature, and other testing organizations have published reports on the contaminants that we tested for being in infant formula. So we looked at all of those and then decided to test the most popular infant formulas for those contaminants.
Yeah, and can you walk us through which contaminants were tested and why those specifically?
Yeah, so we looked at heavy metals, including lead, arsenic, cadmium, and mercury. Those are generally tested all together with the methodology that we use. There weren't specifically reports about mercury being high in infant formula, but we test all of those four together. We also looked at PFAS, which, as you may know, is almost everywhere. We're exposed to it through our clothes, our food, water, etc. And then we looked at acrylamide as well as bisphenols, including BPA, aluminum, and potassium, all of which the literature indicated could be a problem in infant formula.
Yeah. And so how many batches or samples per formula were tested to ensure reliability of the finding?
We tested 2 to 3 samples of each formula, and those represented 1 to 3 lots. And by lots, I mean different expiration dates. As you know, in the marketplace, we have to work with what we can get. So in some cases, we got all three different expiration dates. And in some cases, we couldn't get more than one, but we still tested 2 to 3 samples of each formula.
And so many people on my social media have been asking about ready to feed formula and breast milk. And I know they weren't included in the study, but why did you specifically just choose powder formula over the ready to feed or breast milk?
Yeah, so what we can test depends on our resources. The scope of this study just focused on the powdered formula. If we get the resources, we may be able to expand our testing into the ready to eat formula and other types.
Yeah. So do you think, and again, I know it wasn't research, so for those listening, this is obviously not any definite research answer per se, but say if a formula tested on the best list or the worst list, do you think the ready to feed would align on that list as well, or it would be a totally different?
It could be totally different. So I do have to say to all the listeners, just because a formula from one brand, a powdered formula from one brand was in our worst choices category does not mean that the ready to eat formula from that brand would also be there. Infant formula in the US is basically manufactured by 3 major companies. And so these companies could have formulas in the top choices as well as the worst choices categories. It's really dependent on the raw ingredients, the manufacturing process for each formula. So the results only apply to the formula that we tested and we report on. You shouldn't think that the ready to eat formula from that company would have the same results.
Okay, that's good to know. And then another person brought up a great point that formula does get a bad rap a lot of times because it is a man-made powder or liquid. However, if moms are eating or drinking foods with toxins in them, can we assume that their breast milk could also possibly have lead or arsenic in it?
There have been reports showing that breast milk does have these contaminants as well. So, yes, there is a possibility. Now, the matter of how each is processed within the baby, that's a different conversation, and that's something a pediatrician would be able to talk
Yeah.
more about.
And some readers, they've raised concern about fear mongering. How do you respond to the idea that the article may have alarmed parents more than just informed?
Yeah, so we really wanted these results to be empowering for parents. The majority of the formula we tested is in our top choices or good choices categories. There are just 10 that are in our worst choices category. Parents should really keep these results in perspective. All of these formulas are safe, they meet all of the regulatory requirements, but what our results show is that it's possible for manufacturers to produce these infant formulas without detectable levels of these contaminants, because the majority of them
Right.
are at very low levels or undetectable levels. And that's what we want these results to
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. And I liked how you worded it best, good, and then worse. Like it's not like these are terrible, you stop feeding your children them immediately, but it does prove a point that there are a lot that have all green checks, which is
correct.
great. So of the 41 formulas tested, were there patterns in contamination based on brand type, price point, or organic versus non-organic?
No, we didn't detect any patterns such as that. There's no easy way to just look at the brand or the designation to know which one would have contaminants in it.
And what were the most concerning results from your testing and why?
Finding these contaminants in infant formula is concerning and worrisome overall, but the levels of inorganic arsenic and lead that we found in some of the formulas were concerning because, through raw ingredient testing, through finished product testing, manufacturers can lower these levels and we wouldn't be able to find them. So that was very concerning, that there aren't any regulatory requirements for manufacturers to conduct that testing.
That's very interesting. And I never also thought about that they're not really, that should be changed, I hope.
Yeah. I do want to say, though, that all of the formula, as far as we know, meets all of the regulatory requirements that are in the US, and some manufacturers that they even test to European standards. So they're meeting the current requirements, but we just think that there should be more requirements.
Right. So speaking of them all being appropriate for the requirements, did you compare the US safety limits to international guidelines at all?
Not as part of this article or as part of this study. No, we didn't.
Yeah. So were you shocked that there were so many formulas that had the green checks next to it? When you went into this, what was your prediction about what you thought you were going to find? I mean, obviously we hope that it's all green checks, but were you shocked that so many had green checks?
No, I mean, we were hoping that there would mostly be green checks and we wouldn't find any issues. But, this is one of the most highly regulated products in the marketplace. So I guess it would be expected that there were that many green checks, is what
Yeah.
I want to
Yeah.
say.
Yes, that's what we hope. Were there any brands that surprised you, either for good or bad reasons, based on your findings?
No, not really. We didn't have any preconceived ideas about any brands
Hmm.
at all. So there wasn't anything that we were expecting and were surprised by.
And how much do environmental factors like soil, water, and air pollution contribute to the presence of contaminations in formula ingredients?
Yeah, so all of these contaminants that we found in infant formula are present in our environment. Heavy metals can be found in root vegetables such as sweet potatoes. There's arsenic in rice, etc. And it's just based on how it's grown and where it's grown. So these are in our environment. They've been found in other things like you said, food, water, breast milk, etc. But there is a way to not have detectable levels in infant formula. And that's what we should be working towards.
Right. Do you think that the contamination issue is more about sourcing ingredients or about the manufacturing process? Or
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. This contamination can happen from the raw ingredients and during the manufacturing process. That's why it's important to test at both points, the raw ingredients and the final product.
yeah. And a lot of parents were concerned if their child has an allergy to cow milk, to those terms. What advice maybe would you have for them in regards to if their child's formula was on the worst list, to kind of find a new formula that maybe isn't on the best list?
Yeah, so I would say again that they should keep these results in perspective. If they do have a formula, they are already using a formula that's on the worst choices list, and they want to switch, they should talk to their pediatrician. The pediatrician would know that, has the health history of their child and can best advise them on when to switch and what type of formula to switch to. I know it's not always easy switching formulas. Babies are very resistant to switching, but there are certain points at which you sometimes generally do have to switch. So the
Right.
pediatrician can inform them the best.
Yeah. How have formula companies responded to your findings, and have they taken any steps since the publication?
There are no steps that I know of from manufacturers at this point. We published some of the responses from manufacturers in the article, asserted their commitment to producing safe products, also that they're following all of the requirements that are in place right now. So that's good to hear, but again, we think that they can do more.
Yeah. Um, so how should parents interpret this report alongside their pediatrician's advice? Some people were saying, like, I don't want to take this, TikTok video or this report into my pediatrician, but how can they maybe present it to their pediatrician in a way that they can take it a little more serious?
As a mom, I would go and say, I'm concerned about the presence of heavy metals and other contaminants in baby formula. And there have been recent reports about this contaminant in the formula that I've been using. What would your advice be for me to switch formulas? I think the pediatrician may say, and we say as well, this isn't an acute risk. Most of the issues that occur from contaminants like heavy metals are through long-term exposure to
Hmm.
high levels. So, the pediatrician, like I was saying earlier, can best advise you like when you should switch formula and if that would be the best thing to do for your baby.
Right. And what does Consumer Reports want to see from the FDA and lawmakers in terms of regulation and enforcement?
So at this point, even before we heard about Operation Stork Speed, we asked HHS to ensure that the FDA has the staffing and the resources needed to continue ensuring that infant formula is free of harmful levels of these potentially dangerous contaminants. After we heard about Operation Stork Speed, that was very encouraging, and we're looking forward to seeing the details of that, and we're hoping that the FDA has the necessary staffing and resources to implement that program.
Yeah. And so when they said they were coming out with Operation Stork Speed so quickly in a line with the article, what was your reaction? And do you think that it's a strong enough response?
We were very encouraged to see that announcement just soon after we shared our article with them. We share our reports generally 48 hours in advance with the FDA, and it was very encouraging, I would say, to see that announcement.
Yeah. Right. So what would you say to reassure parents who are feeling overwhelmed and confused?
Again, keep the results in perspective. Talk to your pediatrician. Remember that this is through long-term exposure, through to very high levels. Reduce your risk where you can. As we suggest in the article, one thing you can do is use filtered water. That's another potential source of exposure to heavy metals and other contaminants. So you want to make sure that you're using filtered water and your baby's not getting exposed through that pathway.
Is Consumer Reports planning additional testing, whether it be on formulas, baby food, or other children's products in the near future?
Yes, we are. Certainly, we don't have our list of the projects for the next coming year. Our fiscal year starts in June every year.
Okay.
So we definitely have a big focus on baby. You can check out all of our ratings, including our food reports on cr.org/baby. And we are certainly planning to continue our testing in this area.
Yeah. And a lot of parents asked about specific formulas that were not on the list. Do you have any advice now that this is such a hot topic on what they can do? Again, you said that everything is under regulation, but just to kind of give them a little more comfort.
Like I was saying earlier, there isn't a way to apply these results to formulas that we haven't tested. I'll also say this is a snapshot. Even for these formulas, the food marketplace is very dynamic. Things change. So this is just a snapshot in time for these formulas. So there isn't a way to apply our results to products we have not tested. Mm-hmm. Again, I would encourage them to talk to their pediatrician if they have any concerns. And I also want to say at this point, parents should not try to make their own formula. That can be very dangerous. The level of nutrients required, fluid required, electrolytes required, it's almost impossible to do at home. So they should never try that or offer alternative foods when their baby isn't ready for them.
That's great advice. So you also found some BPA in the formula. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so, that was actually good news that we found just one product concerning levels of BPA. If we had done this test about 10 years ago, we probably would have found more products. So that's an example of change in the marketplace. And that's what we want for these other contaminants, that the next time that we test in a few years, we would have even less formulas with detectable levels.
Yeah, that's great because that was such a buzzword, maybe like 5 or 10 years ago. And now I feel like everything is BPA safe, which is great to hear that formulas are on that as well. All right. Well, you have given us so much information, and really, I feel like this is going to make parents feel so much more comfortable outside of reading just the data report for it. What's the single most important takeaway that you want parents to remember from this report?
I want parents to remember that there are a lot of safe choices for formula in the marketplace, and we hope that our results are empowering to them and just are giving them more information to make choices, and also to remember to keep these results in perspective. As a mom myself, I can understand, how a parent would feel after reading these results. So keep them in perspective and talk to your pediatrician with any concerns.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's a great place to end another episode of The Running Wine Mom. Thank you so much for joining us today and breaking down the facts behind the headlines. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So if you're a parent feeling anxious after reading the Consumer Reports article, I hope this conversation helps put things in perspective. Yes, there are concerns, but there's also a path forward: better testing, stronger regulations, and informed choices. Remember, talk to your pediatrician before making any changes, stay aware of what's in products you use, and keep asking questions. If you found this helpful, share it with another parent who might be feeling the same way, and make sure to follow for more updates on formula safety, infant health, and everything in between. You can follow me on Instagram at @TheRunningWineMom_. And where can the listeners find you?
Listeners can find our article on cr.org/baby.
Yeah, and I will link all of that for you as well. So thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, you are strong, you are capable, and you are all amazing. Until next time, keep running, keep sipping, and keep embracing the joy of motherhood. Cheers, and I will be back next Tuesday.